What's up, everybody? Welcome to Ink Drink Think, Episode 9, Part 2. On this high-flying episode, we are covering the Man of Steel himself, Clark Kent, Superman. I'm your host, Michael Pickard, and as always, I am joined by my wonderfully talented co-hosts and friends, Johnny Wise. Johnny, you are up.
Yo, I'm Johnny. Drawing Superman. I think I mentioned last time that I'm not the biggest Superman fan. I wasn't a big fan of him as a kid because I preferred Batman and Wolverine, and Superman to me felt kind of like just a big old nerd. I'm learning to like the character now, and last episode I was halfway through drawing Superman in space. Well, you couldn't really tell that from the drawing yet, but a big old space fight was happening, and it was going okay. Excited to pick it back up again. It's going pretty good. And tonight I am drinking Heineken. Big one, big boy.
Yeah, that's a big one. It makes sense why you said drawing instead of drinking.
Yeah, well, a couple of big ones in by now.
Nice.
And of course, guys, joining us as well, quite well actually, our co-host and friend, Nate Wells. Nate, you are up, buddy.
Hey guys, Nate Wells. Mentioned this on the first part. I'm a huge Superman fan, so I was really excited for this episode. Today I'm going to be finishing up this drawing of Superman, like coming out of, it really just kind of looks like some machinery. I imagined it to be like a big robot head, but for the sake of like drawing Superman kind of full frame, lost a lot of the robot head. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm mostly now just drawing sort of the background, the machinery that he's burst out of. Yeah, kind of excited to get into it. The pencils are pretty loose, so I'm going to be able to do sort of a lot of the actual drawing right now. And tonight I am enjoying pretty shitty margarita thing. It's not great. So
I'll drink it quick and hopefully there's a lot of salt.
yeah.
And of course, guys, last but not least, Teacher Todd himself, Todd Blackwood. Todd, you are up, buddy.
Hey, everybody. I also am a huge Superman fan, and I've got a whole bunch of variations of the drawings of Superman that I've been working on. But the ones I've settled on is sort of a Christopher Reeve version, who is still my favorite Superman actor, and I'm a giant fan of that movie in general. So it wasn't quite working, but I'm starting to get happier with it now. So I think I'm gonna improve upon his face, and maybe I'll do some more Superman drawings eventually. So
yeah, you definitely should.
Ready. What's
Yeah,
up?
man.
I said, yeah, you definitely should. Looks good.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, man, it's absolutely
trying.
stellar. You're getting a lot of Alex Ross vibes, but also keeping your own flair in there, which I absolutely appreciate.
Yeah, I feel like I didn't mean to copy some lighting by Alex Ross, but there is something similar there going on or something. Yeah, I like to make things shiny, so I'm trying to not to make them too shiny. Oops. How's yours coming, Michael?
Well, to round out the quartet here, as I said, am Michael Pickard, and tonight I'm going to be finishing up my Superman versus the Wayward tractor piece. Superman stopping this tractor from hitting a mother cow and her calf. I got most of the line work in terms of etching in the cornfield in the background, the silos, the effect here, and all of the hatching on the tractor itself. I might do a little bit more on this backside here, but I'll leave that up till the end of the episode. We'll check that out. But for the most part, I'm going to be doing some brush work throughout this episode. And of course, guys, if you tuned into part 1 of the Superman episode, you know that Johnny left us off on an interesting cliffhanger question. So Johnny, I'm going to give you the floor to lead us in to your question.
Okay. So last time I think I mentioned that I got started writing just for fun, like a little bit of a Justice League like treatment. I don't know if I mentioned that.
Yeah.
But a big part of it involves something that might be a bit controversial, and it is basically all of them being pretty heavily depowered, particularly Superman, who I kind of envision as being depowered to the point that like he's about as strong as like Spider-Man. You know, he can like lift up like a car pretty easily, a truck with a bit more effort, and then sometimes he's got those moments where he'll be able to lift like whatever it was, like a floodgate or whatever it is in that one story. How do you guys feel about the idea of depowering Superman? Because I feel like it's something that a lot of people will get pretty mad at.
Well, what's your goal as far as depowering him? Because it's like, what's your motivation? Is it because he's so powerful it's hard to figure out what to do with him?
Not
not a-
necessarily hard to figure out what to do with him, like say in his own stories, but hard to figure out. Like you take, for example, the Justice League movie, and
Right.
they're all pointless until they like
Yeah.
wake up Superman, and then
Yeah.
once they do that, he just wins immediately.
Yeah, that's
And it's like,
their
what-
plan. They're like, we can't win if we don't have Superman, so the plan is just get Superman.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
is like often the plan. I feel like I haven't read loads of the stories, but I feel like I've read quite a bit where like the plan is we need to bide time until Superman gets here, which is
Yeah.
just like what if I feel personally like it would be more interesting if Superman was like, and I think Mike mentioned this idea a while ago, like a jack of all trades. Like they need him because he's got like a lot of different powers. But what if like Wonder Woman was like stronger than him?
So you're
And like
so
people
you're-
and the Flash can definitely run faster than him. That is like
Yeah.
that should
Yeah.
happen. That shouldn't be a contest.
Well, I think that's my follow-up to that question is, so should there be somebody that is really as powerful as Superman is traditionally? Like, what if, is there
Yeah,
somebody
so
else that's more powerful?
I kind of envisioned it as none of them are quite as like crazy powerful as they are currently in the comics.
Mm-hmm.
So like Wonder Woman, I envisioned as being like a Thor kind of type, like not even like a Hulk kind of level of strength, but like just real strong and loves a scrap, which is very fun for her. I feel like part of what I really liked about her in Batman v Superman was that she's just smiling the whole time. She just really liked to scrap, which was fun
Yeah.
to watch.
Yeah, makes sense.
So yeah, none of them are like as strong as they are currently in comics, and I really don't like the whole Batman thing of like, because in his own stories, I mean, at the moment actually, he's become pretty much like he can do anything in his own stories as well. But that's kind of the problem with him, is that
Right.
he can just like why is it that he like has trouble fighting like a guy with a gun, some level
Yeah.
of trouble, and then in the
Yeah.
Justice League he can just do anything, and they like write that he's like the most dangerous member, and I'm like, so in my little treatment that I did just to pass the time, I kind of wrote that he's kind of the spy, if you will, like he can like break in and do some covert shit, but isn't
Yeah.
usually like right on the front, like fighting big aliens and shit, because that's boring to me.
That's ridiculous. Batman in space is the dumbest thing.
Yeah,
No, I couldn't agree.
Yeah,
You think so? Why do you say that?
I don't like it. I feel like he's much more noir, like street level, and then when he's with the League, he's like smart and tactical, but he's the guy they send in to like infiltrate.
Well,
is how I
Johnny,
saw it.
to your initial question with Superman, like I'm all for it, especially because when you talk about usage amongst the other Justice League members, it's like if you're just waiting for Superman to show up, why is this a Justice League book or story? Like there
Yeah,
should be a
exactly.
narrative reason that he has to work alongside these people, not just because it's like a threat, like not that it's the same universe, but like Galactus level. There should be another reason that there is a team to begin with.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I think like you're getting to with like Batman being in space. Batman has no place being in space, and he shouldn't be on every Justice League mission. But nor should maybe Wonder Woman shouldn't be on like an underwater mission. Like maybe that's Green Lantern, Aquaman, and Superman. You know?
Yeah.
I think with
Yeah, that's kind of how I saw it.
yeah, Johnny, like we talked about with the Avengers in regards to your pitch, how what that movie does really well is that even though there are some extremely powerful people in that roster, none of them are lifting planets or are, decimating civilizations with like a blink of an eye.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
all
exactly.
they're all on a level of scale that is appropriate, that they would need each other for different reasons. Like if Superman is as fast as the Flash, you negate the Flash. If he's stronger than Wonder Woman, you negate Wonder Woman. If he can do
Yeah.
everything in space faster and stronger than the Green Lantern can, then why even have the Green Lantern?
Yeah, exactly. And I
Yeah.
even wrote in there at one point that I think like Superman should be like vulnerable to kryptonite like he is, but also like he could just be beaten up just generally. Like Wonder Woman could probably beat him in a fight. I just think that would make the character more interesting to me. But I wonder whether it goes like to the extent that like I don't know, I wonder whether this is a thing that divides non-Superman fans and Superman fans where like Nate and Todd, do you disagree?
Not at all. No, I agree actually with like everything you just said.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I love Superman. I think that not always, but a lot of the time he's a little too powerful, and especially like within the context of the Justice League. Yeah, I agree. Like Aquaman and Wonder Woman are probably physically stronger than him.
Yeah.
And Superman, I think I said it maybe in the Flash episode, like Superman's like fast, but he's not literally faster than a speeding bullet. Flash is like the fastest thing ever,
Yeah.
and
Right.
kind of laughs at like Superman's super speed. Superman's like quick,
Yeah, that's how I see it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea that they all sort of like can come down in power.
Yeah.
And I don't think necessarily it always has to be universal. And this is true already to some extent, but like the power levels should sort of be dictated by the individual story that they're in. Because there's some stories where like, yeah, it would serve the story if Superman was like crazy strong, and sort of like a more fantastical sort of setting. But in your sort of like everyday metropolis, like, stopping a runaway car or whatever, like, yeah, it'd be kind of cool to see if he like kind of struggled with it a little bit. I always
Yeah.
think about the like the Fleischer cartoons, which I love to death.
Yeah.
And Superman's so physical in those cartoons.
Yeah.
You
struggles
always
in
see him. Yeah, he struggles. You can tell like he sweats, and he's always like he's leaping around all over the place. Like even just like getting off the ground, he kind of has to work at.
Right.
There's one where he like has to pull a train, like up the tracks,
Oh,
and he's
yeah.
like really, really working at it, and that's so cool. Because just doing that period is already insanely powerful.
Yeah, that's
If he stops a rocket ship or a missile from hitting a building, that's insane. So we're already dealing with like something that's absolutely ridiculous. And then like in the last 85 years, they've pushed it farther and farther and farther and farther and farther to where it's, I don't know what more ridiculous than ridiculous is, but
Ludicrous speed.
ludicrous. That's a good word.
Yeah.
yeah, and they have like a thing where he always ties in a race with the Flash, which
Right.
is like just pointless. Like
Yeah. Never
just
have
have
that
him
be a
as the
thing.
team then.
And that's the thing
Yeah.
I hate about that race is that in the comics there's like the famous thing that Flash fans point to where Flash is like, you can't catch me, like that was always for charity. Like I was letting you tie me. And then the Flash like speeds way past Superman. The problem with that is like if Superman is as fast as the Flash, then if you want the Fast to then again be the fastest man alive, he has to then be even 10 times faster than what he already was. And if he was already able to time
Yeah.
travel, like, then what is he doing? Is he like moving so fast that he's, like breaking dimensions every time he like moves,
Right.
There has to be some
Yeah.
level of like check and balance when you apply that to the character.
Yeah, I did away with all of the time travel stuff when I was writing it as well. I just had it like he's faster than any vehicle that people have come up with, but like he's not so fast that he can go back in time and meet himself because I just personally find that really weird and boring. And it always happens every time I like go to pick up a Flash book because I'm like, yeah, I really like the Flash. It's got like I just like the character, and it's always like there's like a million Flashes, and there's always just so much weird dimension stuff that some people love, but I've never been a fan of.
And time travel is such a hard thing to write and keep up with.
Yeah.
If you take that out of the equation, Flash does sort of like feel a little heavier. Like the consequences can sort of happen in real time. Like there's no way that he can negate things.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
I
so
love Superman the movie. But you know, the end he like flies around the world backwards and reverses time. And again, going back to my like in the context of the story, make these characters as powerful as they need to be. Is sort of my philosophy, because like in that movie I really don't have a problem that he does it. I think it's sort of like a weird writing thing. Like time travel is just always kind of a weird not cop out thing, but it can be. I kind of thought that in the Avengers movie too. But like in Superman Returns, I have no problem with him lifting the Kryptonite Island because it's a really cool end to that story. Even though if I was writing my ideal Superman, there's no way he's lifting an island made of kryptonite out of the water and putting it into space, you know? But I like it in that movie.
Yeah.
I was recently rereading the Action Comics 1000 special. And in particular, there's one by Richard Donner, I think it's Jeff Johns, if I'm not mistaken, and Olivia Coipel.
Oh, wow.
And it's set in the 1930s. And it got my brain thinking about Superman being placed in a specific time period. And so to you three, I ask, if you were writing a Superman story or could dictate where all of the Superman stories take place, what era is it in?
Oh, gosh.
70s, the 80s, the 90s.
I think 40s or 50s or the 80s. Just because I loved the 80s Superman comics. And, you know, most of the movies came out in the 80s, although not the good ones.
Well, now, are you talking about, so you're saying what era would the Superman comics be set in, or the movies? I missed.
Just the character.
Yeah, just the character as a whole, the mythos. You could do films, TV, comics, whatever. Radio shows.
God.
Because I think there is a charm to the depowered original version of the character from the 30s. I think there is something there that's very endearing, but also ripe for storytelling. And that's not to say that Superman moving planets isn't good storytelling, but I would particularly be a fan of seeing more of Superman down on the ground, low level strength, and handling modern problems, you know?
Yeah. I think I would quite like it if they were all in like 80s to 90s. I think just because then you don't have like the issue of like, I don't know, a lot of problems where you're like, well, why wouldn't they just use a smartphone and shit like that to solve it? It makes it easier for that, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's definitely a narrative problem, period, whether it's Superman or not.
I really like that story in that comic, the 1000, because it happens directly after Action Comics #1. It's like one of those goons from Action Comics #1, who Superman sort of follows up with directly after the events of that very first book. So it's kind of cool to revisit that.
Yeah, that was a standout to me in that whole issue, was that story. And of course, Olivier Coipel, I don't know how to pronounce his name, so I apologize if I'm butchering it. His work is just fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
So
he's
like
great.
Him drawing Superman was just mind-bogglingly cool. But
Yeah.
yeah, I particularly liked the morality he's presenting in that story and how the period that it takes place in dictates how Superman's presence is felt. You know, like the guy goes, like the ending of the story is this crook turns himself around and, you know, it's like the heat of the summer and he turns on a fire hydrant and like lets the kids play in the street in the water. That's a very old-timey thing to do, as opposed to something you would see in
Yeah.
like 2020, for example.
Yeah. I mean, at 19, starting right in 1938, Superman would be really fun.
Yeah, I think so. Kind of just put it in the year that it started
Yeah, I mean,
and
to
go
me,
from there.
probably the big question with that is, does that mean you're taking him all the way back to his roots? Do you then introduce Batman, the Justice League, Wonder Woman? Who are the villains? Did you guys know that the Ultra Humanite was the original Superman villain?
No,
I did not
never
know
heard that.
Yeah.
No, I've only
Yeah.
even vaguely heard what that is. I barely even know what that is.
The Ultra Humanite was a guy. He's on the Justice League cartoon. He's a big albino ape who's like hyper intelligent. But apparently he was like the original Lex Luthor, and he was a bald guy in a wheelchair. So he was conceived as the opposite of Superman. They were like, well, what's the opposite of Superman? And it's like, well, a guy who has incredible mental powers but is in a wheelchair and is bald. And he could inhabit other people's bodies and make them commit crimes. So Superman couldn't figure out why these normal people were doing all this weird stuff. But eventually they replaced him with Lex Luthor, and then they were like, well, now we got two bald guys. How do we not mix them up? And at some point he inhabits an albino ape, and somebody goes, why'd you do that? And he goes, well, I didn't want anyone to mix me up with Lex Luthor. Like, they made a reference to it in the comics.
Just the writer's reason.
Yeah, but I was trying to figure out because the Ultra Humanite shows up on the Justice League a couple times, and I was trying to figure out who he was, because he looks a lot like Gorilla Grodd, except he's white. And I was like, who is this guy again? And I was surprised how far back he went. Yeah, he's a great character, but he's nondescript in some ways. Like, you just kind of forget about him. But yeah, I was surprised by that. Same with like the Parasite. The Parasite, I think, was a regular looking guy, and they made him purple eventually to make him more spooky or whatever. But originally, a lot of those guys were regular looking criminals with superpowers of some sort.
Yeah, I remember there's one of those like early, those like 50s cartoons.
Yeah,
And he fights the Parasite, and he's just like a guy with a mustache.
Really?
that's right. Well,
I don't like what that has to say about mustached men.
They're evil, apparently.
I resent that as someone who's
That's
rocked
the-
one.
Well, it's the mirror universe, Michael.
Yeah. It's like the Star Trek rule.
I
If
have
they're
a
in an
goatee.
evil universe, they have to have a goatee.
Yeah, he was just like a guy. I think he was like balding on the top, and he just like had a mustache and wore like a polo shirt. I'm probably
Yeah.
totally making some of those details up, but it was something like that.
Well, I think it was much later in the 50s. I think it was the late 60s, and it was the Filmation version.
Yeah,
I
I think
recall.
you're right. Yeah, I'm thinking back on the look of it. And yeah, there's definitely 60s animation. Yeah.
Yeah. Because they did him and Batman, and then Filmation did a 70s version of Batman, and that's the one I grew up with, which I love. And Adam West does the voice for the 70s version.
Yeah.
Plus, like, one of my favorite lost Batman villains is Sweet Tooth. And the version that's, of course, played by Paul Lynde, who is one of my favorite celebrities of all time. The most insane person who ever lived. But I digress. Superman's interesting. He's so hard to challenge. I'm gonna be the voice of dissent here and say that I love him being super powerful, but he's got to have challenges. You've got to figure out how to either knock him out of the running, or he's vulnerable to magic. So Mxyzptlk is a great villain for him. But that's why the Superman stories get so bombastic so fast is because they just couldn't figure out what to do with them, so they just went
Right.
nuts. And yeah, like having him, like that night in the Superman movie where he first goes out and patrols and he apprehends the jewel thief and gets the little girl's cat out of her tree and gets those guys on that boat. Like that's such a fun montage of Superman doing exactly what he should be doing. He's essentially, he and Batman are in the same universe at that point, patrolling and doing things. But, if that was real life, like there'd be no crime in Metropolis ever. I mean, he's just everywhere at once and he's never makes mistakes. And, you got to challenge him
But then,
somehow.
how would you put him in the same universe as Batman then, though?
Well,
In the sense that they're both patrolling the streets.
Yeah, well, how would you have like them meeting? Say, would you just not? Which is an option I would
I
be
think
open
we
to.
should. Absolutely.
But then why doesn't he just solve all of Batman's problems?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question.
I think we need to rewatch Batman v Superman to answer that one.
Yeah.
When they're literally
they
3
hate
miles
each
away
other,
from
that's
each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a weird choice, I think, to have those two cities being neighboring cities.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, that there brings an interesting question. So there have been a lot of different locations for Metropolis and Gotham within the comics. And I know one interpretation is that Gotham is in New Jersey, South Jersey, and that Metropolis is across Delaware River in Delaware.
Oh.
And there's an old DC map that I think is from the 70s that illustrates that.
Wow.
But I'll ask you guys, where's Metropolis?
New York.
Ooh, interesting. Okay.
I'd always assumed that was New York was Metropolis and Chicago was Gotham. They were just doppelgangers for the two cities. But I
kind of always thought that.
I mean, Chicago, I always thought of as Gotham. I don't really know enough about American cities to
Why not?
weigh in on this. I do know that I heard. I do know that there's it's in canon now, isn't it? That the DC Earth is bigger than ours, right? I can't remember where I heard this, but because they have New York and they have all of our cities, and then they also just made some up, whereas Marvel they just have New York and things like that. They just have the normal cities.
That's true. Yeah, Marvel
There's
doesn't have.
Yeah, they didn't make any up, so it's in canon apparently that
That's interesting. I never.
It's
thought
always weird to
DC world
me
is bigger.
in DC books when they do reference New York, because I just wonder about and it's stupid because it's all fiction, but I just wonder about the American culture, what's going on if there's a New York and a Metropolis, if there's because Metropolis is very clearly a cultural, technological hub.
Yeah.
And I'm well, if San Francisco and Los Angeles and New York, Chicago, and all these places exist, are we just, is that world just heightened and all of it can I don't know. It's weird to me when you start talking about real places other than Washington DC can be a thing, obviously, but yeah, I sort of like the idea that there isn't maybe a New York and there's just a Metropolis or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it simplifies it when there are no real world cities in the DC universe, because you can just fill in X location is where Gotham would be. But for me, because they are in that universe with New York and, Los Angeles, for example, I've always imagined that Metropolis was on the West Coast, potentially near San Francisco, but a more, pardon the lack of a better word for it, but a metropolis on the West Coast, this big sprawling city, And if you want to use modern ideas into that concept, you could say that, Silicon Valley develops into Metropolis. But For me, like I always assumed, like with Gotham, especially because New York is also known as Gotham, I always assumed that Gotham was in itself a city on the East Coast that was just a lesser city compared to New York. So similarly to the way that like Philadelphia or Atlantic City are cities, they're nowhere near as big as New York.
Mm.
But then again, it does make it way easier if it's in a fictional world without our known cities to try to make
Yeah.
sense of everything.
Yeah. I mean,
I think
there's
that's more fun as well. It's not
Yeah.
obviously what they've ever been going for, I guess. But yeah, I think it's more fun if they're just like, yeah, we never mention real cities. It's always just whatever Emerald City or Coast City. Like, they just
Yeah.
make them all up.
Well, and Marvel characters have real world problems in a sense, so it would make sense that they would live in real world cities, whereas DC have a larger than life quality to the big ones, especially. So, for me, like Gotham isn't like an expressionist version of Chicago or whatever. Same with Metropolis is an exaggerated version of New York or whatever city it's supposed to be based on. So it makes sense. Star City. What's that? Hal Jordan, I think.
No, Green Arrow, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Central City. Who's Central City?
That's the Flash.
That's the Flash. Where's Green Lantern? Where does Green Lantern come from? Do you remember?
He's Coast City.
Coast City, yeah.
Coast City.
Who's Emerald? Is Emerald one, or have I made that up?
That's
don't
in
know.
The Wizard of Oz.
Maybe it's that. It's
Yeah.
probably the Wizard of Oz.
Isn't it? Isn't that the one in The Wizard of Oz?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, the Emerald City.
Okay, so
Emerald
where's
City,
that in the
yeah.
DC universe?
Right behind the Fortress of Solitude. No, it
Follow
is
the
funny
allure.
though.
Oh,
It's funny that we're coming to that conclusion because we're talking about like Marvel being like, oh, well, everybody's in New York. It's easy. Or like, for
Yeah.
example, there was one story where like Venom was set in Philly. You know that location, you have the reference, you got it. But with DC, like we just came across, it's like, who's where? Coast City, Central City, Star City,
Yeah.
you know?
yeah.
Yeah, I've
Like
always
it-
thought about like Green Arrow, Green Arrow and maybe Flash is more like West Coast heroes. Like maybe Star City is like Pacific Northwest and Coast City's somewhere in California. Or
This is also
Central City, I mean.
this is extra interesting to me because, and I will stress that not all people from the UK are like this, but me especially, I am so ignorant to it all that it's never occurred to me. I'm just like, it's America, somewhere in America.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
just put it all
so
together.
ignorant of you, Johnny.
Well, yeah, it's definitely not something I think about often. Really, I just kind of like don't worry about where they are geographically. Because let's be honest, all of them can get anywhere in like 4 seconds anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Even
Yeah.
Batman. It's got all those planes.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Marvel characters spent more time bumping into each other on the street too, whereas it seemed to be more of an event in the DC books when they would have to cross over.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, DC is more like sprawling geographically, I think, than the
yeah.
Marvel universe.
Yeah. Stuff got real nutty.
So we talked about it a little bit towards the end of the last episode, or the last part of this episode. But are the Kents the greatest superhero parents in all of comicdom? I don't think there are really any that come in the running as even close seconds. Like Aunt May. Come on. Come on.
Nobody liked Aunt May.
Yeah, no one's ever liked Aunt May. They've been trying to kill her off for years, and they just bring her back.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah, I
always
think-
on death's door, and then she's
Great.
like laying in her deathbed, and Peter's like, Aunt May, I have something to tell you, and she's like, Peter, I feel better, and he's like, Aunt May, I'm getting a cat. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
Whereas like the Kents are actually like representative of of humanity and the things that Superman loves about Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think you
I
can
think we got
question
some there.
them.
Yeah, I can't think of
Yeah,
any.
right.
Parents aren't a big thing in superhero comics, actually, are they? I was trying to think of
No.
any others.
Unless
That's
they're
why the
dead.
Kents are so
Nope.
cool.
Superheroes are
They're
orphans.
all orphans, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's so cool about Superman. He's like, I like it when like his parents are still alive and he can just go visit them. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
like if
Yeah.
he's just a guy with a job and like a girlfriend, and he just like flies home to Kansas to like hang out on the farm with his parents.
Yeah.
That's so cool. But he's also
Well-
the most powerful man in the world.
But also, I mean, but the scene where Jonathan Kent dies in the Superman movie, I thought was a major moment. And
Oh my god, yeah, I love
Like,
it. I love it.
as much as I enjoy him going home and visiting his parents, I at the same time feel like that was a really that for me is kind of canon of him.
Yeah,
has-
yeah.
He has to leave and forces himself to face reality at that point. That he's got,
Yeah.
you know, he's never given a chance to relax and just rest on his laurels.
And
Seems
I
like
think in that movie,
destiny.
it's such a good lesson for him. And we may have talked about it in the first part, but
Yeah.
yeah, that like you can't save everyone, you know, from
Yeah.
everything. It's
Yeah.
such an important lesson
Yeah.
for a young Clark Kent to learn.
Well, and it's setting him up to lose Lois.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, to where he finally at the end of the movie, he's like, "No, I can do something." No.
It is odd that they never went back and revisited his mother in those movies, though, because I don't remember her. Ever showing
Yeah.
up again. And you
Yeah, because
kinda
like in the
think that-
fourth one, he goes back and she has since died, and
right.
he's like selling the farm. Yeah,
Oh wow.
she just like died somewhere. Because like even well, she may have died by the third one actually, because he goes back to Smallville in the third one, and rekindles things with Lana Lang.
Yes, he does.
So thank you, Nate. You just segued us into one of our conversation
I knew
points
it.
for tonight.
I knew as soon as I said Lana Lang.
Lana
Oh, no.
Lang,
Here we go.
the greatest LL character in the Superman mythos.
Oh,
Can you give us a definitive argument as to why Superman should be with Lois Lane, Nate, and not Lana Lang, my girl Lana, who loved him
'Cause
from
he
the
loves-
start?
He loves her. Lana was his high school girlfriend. She was great for then, but you know, Lois is she's like a super powerful, driven, nutty woman that he's just super drawn to in a way that like Lana's a good like hometown girl, and like yeah, if he'd stayed in Smallville, yeah, they probably would have stayed together and had kids and all that. Just been working
Right.
on the Kent farm, but he goes off to become Superman. And
Wow.
Lois Lane is the woman that Superman is gonna marry. Whereas a pre-Superman Clark Kent, yeah, sure, probably gonna end up with Lana. I don't dislike Lana. I think she's great, but
yeah.
that's just like his first love.
Right.
Sets him up for Lois, who in my mind is like he's just so blown away by like just kind of her presence in a way that he doesn't get a lot with like people because he is who he is.
What is
So
it about
Lois
her,
Lane
though,
is
that's so
the-
appealing?
What is it about Lois?
Yeah. I've never quite understood that.
I don't know. I think
Why-
there's a lot of
why she stands
interpretations. I think there's a lot of versions of Lois that don't work,
Sure.
mostly on screen.
Hmm.
I like
about-
all of the versions of her on screen, but
Right.
none of them like really work. I actually really liked what is her name? The actress that plays her on Smallville is one of my favorite on-screen
Huh.
Lois Lanes.
Interesting.
Oh, is
'Cause
that
they have,
Erica
like, a
Durant?
really-
Did I get
Yes,
that right?
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Thank you, Brain Vault.
Yeah. No, I think she's great, and I think they have really good chemistry on screen, and like
Yeah.
a really good sort of like back and forth. She like teases him,
Yeah.
and she's just. I don't like that she's not very bright, at least at the beginning when they introduce
In
her.
Smallville.
Yeah, because I think Lois is like absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, because she's like maybe 30, and she's like one of the most renowned reporters in the world.
Right.
You don't get there if you're not just a genius, I think.
Right.
Unless you're, like on a network and you have a pretty face. You know what I mean?
I didn't watch much Smallville. How does he meet her? Does he go to Metropolis, or how does is she a high school student? Did they?
She is his friend from high school, Chloe. Lois is Chloe's cousin, so she comes to Smallville. Yeah,
Oh.
but we're not going to talk about Chloe or Allison Mack.
Yeah,
Oh,
to get too relevant.
Oh yeah.
But Nate,
I forgot about that.
you honestly sold me a little bit on Lois Lane because you made a point about her presence in a room, and I never considered that. Is like,
Yeah,
for a man who literally goes toe to toe with aliens and whatnot, what would be somebody
he fights
who
like
he would,
Darkseid.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
what would actually be something in a human that he would be like, oh, I'm attracted to them, and it's somebody who's equally strong in their world. So I think that's a good point.
And I think
I
in
do
some
succeed
weird
that a
like
little bit.
psychological way, maybe that the fact that like when they meet and she's super like dismissive of him as Clark is like weirdly attractive to him.
Yeah.
But I'm like completely like fan fiction writing the character right now, so I won't do that.
Well,
There's got to
see,
be. There's got to be that
as-
element. What's that? Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna cut in and say, as the resident person who doesn't know anything about Superman and doesn't really know the whole Lana Lang thing, everything that you were saying there is like, well, what I think about Superman is, wouldn't he stay with because he's all American, he would stay with his high school sweetheart, wouldn't he? Surely.
But it's part
Only
of like
if they
his
did things
journey
before
of like
marriage.
moving on and blossoming as a guy. I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe I wasn't aware of all of the blossoming.
That's what everybody loves about
There's-
Superman. He's such a blossomer.
Superman, the story, the character is all about the blossom. So
Well, he's in the movie. He's forced to. He's Lana Lang's a character originally, but he's forced to move on and become what, instead of like settling, shall we say, for Lana Lang. Even though he comes back and clearly has feelings for her, and she's so different from Lois. She's so nice. Lois. is kind of,
she's
You know.
she's a warm person in that movie as
Yeah.
opposed to Lois, who is just kind of a bitch the whole time.
Yeah, she's a cynic.
Yeah.
But I like, that was something that bothered me as a kid, but I like it now. I like how cynical she is, and Superman wins her over,
Yeah.
especially when he says that he never lies. And
Yeah, that interview scene until she starts rhyming is perfect.
yeah, God.
This is so good. I have no idea what you're talking about, and that's just so good to hear.
You don't know?
No, I haven't seen like any of the movies.
Oh lordy.
That's the only thing in that movie that I'm like,
Yeah.
who thought this is a good idea?
Oh, that
Starts
song.
rhyming?
That song used to come on the radio.
No.
As a Superman fanatic as a kid, I literally plugged my ears and was like, "Oh no!"
Oh my god.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
I don't know why they.
So does she sing a song?
Yeah,
It's a musical,
in her
Johnny.
head. So they have it. Superman and Lois Lane have an interview at her apartment, and then she asks about his powers, and he says, "Hey, do you want to go for a little flying with me?" And she's like, and he's like, "Don't worry, I'll keep you safe." And at first it's really scary, and then she starts feeling safe and getting used to it, and then the music starts, and then you hear this voiceover by Lois Lane where she starts speaking these words to a song called, I think, "Can You Read My Mind?"
Yeah.
And it's just
What?
a scene. It's a scene from an otherwise perfect film that I just block out. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I do. I'll show someone that movie, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
okay, no, just we're gonna
Yeah.
talk for like 2 minutes, and we're not gonna watch the movie, and then when they land, we can watch the movie again.
Oh, it's one of those bits. I have
Yeah,
those bits,
I've shown
for the
people, and
movie.
they're like, they'll say like, no, that movie sucked because that one part that was stupid. I'm like, if you ignore the one part, it's a great movie.
It's a great movie. Yeah, but that one part,
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
I would be. I would be curious to go back and remember why it is they decided to throw that in, because I kind of remember either the commentary or
Yeah,
some
they address
documentary
it
where
somewhere.
Donner was talking about it, and he was like, "They made me do that," or maybe he really felt they needed it, or it just, I don't know.
Yeah, they address it somewhere. Yeah, and I don't remember where it is, but there was some excuse and or justification for it,
Yeah,
and I don't really remember what it was.
maybe they thought it would be a radio hit or something.
Well, it sounds like it was in a way.
So I don't know who with, but yeah.
That's like Kiss from a Rose. When I was a kid, that was my jam.
Oh, that's still the
Oh,
jam,
yeah,
dude.
yeah.
Oh man.
I'll never let that song out of my heart.
Oh my god, I
Damn, yeah,
love
that's
that.
like the opposite. That's like such a success story with that one.
Oh, what a bop, dude.
That is a bop. That's the
But yeah,
definition of a bop.
Ah, Seal, man.
Yeah.
So okay.
Which I'm not really down with the Prince soundtrack for Batman.
Oh yeah.
the
Oh
first
yeah,
one.
me neither.
I didn't love that, but you get Seal
I
in the
like
mix. Damn. Now you're talking.
Actually, I love the U2 song, "Kiss Me, Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me." That's a great song.
Oh yeah, which one is that one for?
Batman
Like what
Forever, I want to say.
was it? I thought Seal was Batman Forever. I don't know. Maybe
I
it's
could
both.
be wrong. The U2 wrote, but did not sing the James Bond theme for that year as well, and I have a conspiracy theory that was a rejected Bond theme that they were like, well, here you go, we couldn't use it for Bond, so
Wow.
That feels right, yeah.
I think it sounds like one of those great lost Bond songs. So much better. It's kind of lost in Batman. You don't really notice it's even there, but it's a great song. It's incredibly dark for a point where the Batman movies were starting to get pretty silly again.
Mm.
So here's a question for you guys. Do you have a favorite Superman story? Whether it's the first movie, which I know Todd and Nate both love very deeply,
Yep.
or it could be an episode of a cartoon, whether it's the Justice League version of For the Man Who Has Everything, or even something like Red Sun or All-Star Superman.
I don't love the Justice League adaptation of The Man Who Had Everything, and I know you guys might like it, but I really dislike it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Man, you'd think I'd have something offhand that would be a favorite. I don't know. I really like the Jeff Loeb, Tim Sale, Superman for All Seasons.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that's great, but it is kind of like origin story-y.
Sure.
I just think there's like the take on Superman is really good. I like pretty much anything Mark Waid has done with the character.
Yeah.
Birthright was really good. Kingdom Come was great. He gets Superman.
Yeah.
I don't know about just like an outright favorite, because there's like some episodes of the animated series that I think the first arc, the origin story in the animated series, is a perfect origin, and it's pretty much the same every time, but just the way they tackle everything and introduce all of the characters, I think is just phenomenal.
Yeah. The episode where, do you remember the episode where the Justice League is evacuating everybody on an island because a volcano is exploding, and somebody lets Doomsday loose, and Doomsday decides to kill Superman? And to me, it's like one of the quintessential episodes of that whole series. It's like, oh my god, everything about that episode is perfect.
Yeah, that's a good one. I do remember that one.
Watch one episode. It's like how to use the most powerful character in the series in a way where he's challenged. Great one-liners between him and a totally fucking insane bad guy. Do you have to edit that out?
No, curse away. It's fine.
Yeah. When Doomsday's first words to him are, "Superman, I'm here to kill you," is now a bad time.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
And the whole time, Superman's like, "What are you doing?" And meanwhile, they're trying to save all these people, and everybody's like, "Well, let us come help you." And he's like, "No, you need to stay away from this because we're gonna have it out, and
Mhm.
it's gonna be, don't even get near this." And they're fighting in a volcano, which is rad. And
Yeah.
Batman, and it defines the relationship between Batman and Superman because Batman saves him, and there's a real moment between the 2
Mhm.
of them.
Yeah.
Batman doesn't want to admit it, but he both cares about Superman and does not want to lose Superman. He's like, "You're also really important to the League, and I just risked my life to because Batman decides to get caught in an explosion, and he pretty much is like, "Okay, I'm going to die." And you're like, "Oh,
Right.
Batman just decided to die for Superman," except I think Wonder Woman or somebody saves him. Yeah. If you're gonna sit down and watch one episode of that whole series, I think that's the best, one of the best ones to go with.
Wait, which one? I tuned out there.
Yeah, I gotta think of the name. I think it's called, no, it's not called Flashpoint.
I think it's called Doomsday Sanction, maybe.
Yes, that
Or there's one called Doomsday Sanction. It's that
There
one
is.
or another
It's that-
one where they have, yeah.
Yeah, that like 4 or 5 episodes, that whole season in general, that show's just firing on all cylinders. Every episode is
Yeah, where they're just really going in with like the Cadmus stuff.
Ugh,
And
love
yeah,
it.
they like they use
Love it.
Question so perfectly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's
Like,
fantastic.
This
in
is a
that show.
cartoon,
Question
and they're
is
using
so
Question.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, that's how Doomsday gets out, I think. Is that right? Because it pits Captain Atom versus Superman, where it shows
Yeah,
Captain Atom is like a
Which I really
more
liked.
extreme version of Superman, where he does fall. He gets drafted back into the Air Force,
Uh-huh.
out of the Justice League, and then they capture and are torturing Question, and Superman is like, "I'm gonna go get him, and I'm gonna not follow orders here." And it's Superman really stepping out of his comfort zone,
Mm-hmm.
and he just beats the crap out of Captain Atom for it too.
Yeah, and then they
Ugh,
try and take
so
him, and
good.
he's like, "No, this guy's
Yeah.
Justice League," which I thought was really cool. Just beat the shit out of him, and he's like, "All right, I'm taking him because
Yeah.
that's my buddy."
Yeah, he keeps going to Captain Atom. He's like, "Stay down, don't make me do it, because I will."
Yeah, and like, I mean, Captain Atom, just never has the upper hand in that fight.
No,
He gets some
not-
good punches in,
has
but
no chance. Yeah. Oh, so many great things in that episode. Is that
yeah, and
one
the guy that is like working on Doomsday or like releases him was a
Oh, yeah.
guy that was like in the early episodes of Batman the Animated Series, because I remember his stupid like
Well-
bowl cut.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like Dr. Milo or something.
Right, that's right. And Doomsday just kills him.
Yeah, just
yeah,
murders
that
him.
show got pretty dark in spots.
Yeah, it gets like really violent for.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously
Yeah.
those cartoons were always violent, but yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of just straight up murder in the
Yeah.
Justice League.
Yeah.
So here,
Yeah, Superman tries to lobotomize Doomsday, and it doesn't
Yeah, and he
work.
says like, I don't remember if it's in that one
why.
or another one but yeah, I remember there's an interaction between the two where he tries to do it and Doomsday stops him and says not again or something.
Yeah, somehow.
do you guys have an
Sometimes.
ideal Superman fight that you would love to either do yourself or just see in general? Based off this conversation with like Captain Atom and Doomsday and Superman being thrown into that mix.
Fan's own villains.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, always cool.
yeah. I would like to see them, more prominently in the comics. Not that I've actually paid attention to the comics pretty much at all.
Yeah, I think anytime you see Superman like in the Phantom Zone, that's really cool. And it presents a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
cool opportunities to play
Yeah.
around visually.
Yeah, Phantom Zone's pretty scary.
Yeah. I think if you can
Yeah.
just kind of like draw it like it's hell or something, because essentially that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's interesting
have
to
you guys
think
read
about.
that?
Oh, sorry. I was going to say it's interesting with that question
Yeah.
because it's like with the DC universe, most of the big hitters are already people that Superman has fought before.
Yeah.
You mean the villains?
For the most part, yeah. Because I was going to say I think a Green Lantern fight against Superman could potentially be really cool, especially if it's a creative Green Lantern and not just like, oh, here's a hammer, here's a shield, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a fight that's like literally like perfect for imagination where like I know in the who is the director of Mad Max? Is it George?
George Miller.
George Miller. In his Justice League script, Superman gets brainwashed and Green Lantern and Wonder Woman have to take him down. And there's a scene where Green Lantern makes a construct that's a giant green Superman to fight Superman.
Oh wow.
And I think that concept is really fun. Like it would be really cool to see like Superman fight a construct version of himself that like potentially could be as strong as him based off whatever willpower the Lantern has.
Can Green Lantern make kryptonite with his ring? I'm assuming he can't.
I would assume not, because I think it's the radiation, not just the shape and color, you know.
That's right, yeah.
If anybody is interested in showcasing how far they got in the second part here. Any takers?
Sure.
Any takers? Ooh, Todd, here we go. Todd, you have the floor, my friend.
I have a tendency to make my characters really shiny right now, so I'm trying to stop over-rendering things. So I've got a couple really shiny versions of this guy. In fact, I'll show you my Chris Pine version that I decided not to go with. I don't know.
I can see it. I think it looks like Superman.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The thing
Yeah,
about
yeah.
Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman is they're so iconic that I see Chris Pine with a shoe polish in his hair. Which he's it, you know, it could work. He could probably do it in the movies. But for me, you know, having that Christopher Reeve-ish face, or Christopher Reeve or Henry Cavill, just kind of that big lantern jawed, small nose, curly hair.
Yeah, I do think unlike a lot of comic book characters like superheroes, Superman does kind of have a distinctive face that you have to get somewhat right.
Yeah.
Maybe because he doesn't wear a mask, I don't know.
I gave him sideburns too. I really kind of think he looks cool with slightly long sideburns.
Yeah.
Just kind of an Elvis look to him. I'd love to actually really make his hair crazy, but I'm not feeling that brave yet.
Now,
But,
here, actually, this is
that's
something,
the
this is a conversation point we didn't get into too much, but I'll ask you specifically, Todd, because you have yours up. How did you handle the swoop in the hair?
Well, so I looked at a lot of old actors because everybody in the 30s and 40s used to slick their hair back, so I wanted to see how that looked. Gary Cooper is a great example. Johnny Weissmuller.
Yeah.
I really like that look. I wish I could do that with my hair. But then I went in and did a curly Q on a separate piece and literally copied and pasted that onto his head so that there's just a slightly surreal aspect to I do love that S, but that's one thing. Christopher Reeve's hair looks a little too modeled or something, so I wanted to emulate that but not quite do it at the same time. I think he looks great, but if I try to draw him that way, he'd look ridiculous. So I like the hair having a sheen to it.
Todd, I think the way you handled it is really cool. And I think that's such a you way to tackle that issue. of how to illustrate that. Like that, like the way you just elaborated on how you firstly technically did it, but then secondly how like
Yeah.
talking about like the shine in your work and how like it's like a abstract kind of shine that's like making this swoop in his hair. I think it's really cool.
Yeah. Well, I was seeing their hair in those old photos, and I was like, that's what Siegel and Schuster must have been seeing when they were making it up. It must have come from somewhere. I get that it's supposed to look like an S, but there is kind of a slicked back hair with this one hair in the front kind of doing its own thing. But you can do that, but it doesn't look like Superman. So I felt like for me, I had to emulate that, but then really like that's an S in there for sure, and it's very similar to the S in his chest. And I really did feel like if I want to do an iconic looking Superman, he's got to have that on some level. Yeah.
No, man, I think that's a absolutely incredible way to handle that iconography for the character. And I want to go on with that with each of you as we go through your pieces. Because like for mine, the last time I drew Superman, I gave him Henry Cavill's hair, where it was like wavy and kind of like pushed back a little bit. And maybe like some tufts were falling out, you know, and I don't think it really worked. And I've tried drawing him with like perfectly parted hair with like the strand falling out, and it just didn't work either. Like you said with the Christopher Reeve, it looked too modeled. And so with this attempt, kind of figuring out what my take on the character was, I gave him a little bit of a messier hair look. And so it's not really one strand that's falling out. There are a couple where it's kind of like flopping in his face a little bit. But there's one in particular that's more prominent, that's more of a, you know, defining shape on his face, graphically speaking.
Yeah.
But I thought that was an interesting thing to get into. And I think, of course, Todd, you tackled it like a lunatic, and it works perfectly. So
Yeah, it's wild.
Lunatic is a good word. I like that.
that's awesome, man. No, you did a great job. Absolutely
Yeah, that's
stellar.
great.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say, Johnny, I heard you chime in a second ago. So if you'd like, we can give you the floor and we can talk about
Yeah,
Superman
why not?
fighting the parademons.
Yeah. So I'm pretty close to done on that. I'm about where I was with our Kirby episode for like what felt like an hour, just drawing in little white dots in space. But it got me thinking on the when you guys were talking about his hair and his look. I don't know whether it's because I'm like not like a Superman devotee, but I didn't have a lot of trouble nailing down his face at all or his hair. I just went at it. I didn't give it too much thought. I gave his hair a little bit of thought. I don't know whether I mentioned it in the last part of the episode, but it never occurred to me as a kid that the curl is an S. And then it was only about a month ago that it was mentioned to me, and I was like, oh shit, that's so cool. Of course it is. It's an S. That's great.
Yeah.
So I kind of tackled it like he's got this really curly hair that he like slicks back, but it's just this one curl at the front that is like stubborn and always just escapes. So I kind of went there with it. I'm interested to see how Nate and Todd and Mike, but like real Superman fans, feel about my Superman face and whether I got it right or whether because I didn't really go for a reference for an actor really. Even like Christopher Reeve, I just kind of drew like, I feel like he's got softish features. Like I wouldn't draw a Superman with like a pointy nose. And obviously a big old chin and jaw on him. Obviously he's got to be like mostly jaw.
Yeah.
Well, now, have you seen the Christopher Reeve Superman? Is that what I'm?
I've seen it obviously, but I haven't seen the movie. I've watched. I've seen pictures of it, and it is like how I picture Superman, as well as a bit Henry Cavill, but I haven't actually watched any of the movies.
Oh my!
I know, I know.
That's a perfect response.
Yeah, like the shape of the hair on his head, Johnny. Like there's something about just those two shapes. Like it does remind me of the Christopher Reeve, the first '78 movie.
Oh yeah,
a little bit, yeah.
I'll have to go back and look again specifically at his hair. It might have been a subconscious thing. I'm going to redefine that S there a little bit. make it even more prominent. Because I think
you
that's
love that movie.
I can't believe it didn't occur to me that it's an S.
Johnny, do you know what you
course
actually
it
did
is.
with your Superman that I really appreciate, and it was something I
What?
intentionally did? Was I think Nate, you might have done this, but a lot of people draw Superman with almost like Clint Eastwood shut eyes.
Yeah.
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 But I like the fact that you gave him a lot of room for his blues to show. And I tried to
Yeah.
do the same thing in mine. Like I intentionally, same thing that you did. I didn't give pupils to mine. And granted, I can't zoom in like you can. Damn you, traditional medium. But I did do the same thing where I like emphasized the blue of his eyes. And I think that
yeah,
it works really well with your take on the character.
yeah, I agree. I definitely don't think he should have like squinty eyes. He should have like big kind eyes, like pretty open. He's not like a lone cowboy badass. He's like a
Yeah.
friendly guy. You should be able to see his eyes.
Well,
Yeah.
And yeah, the no pupils thing. Oh, sorry, man. I was just gonna
No,
say
no,
the
no, no, go
pupils
on, go
thing
on.
is like, I think the no pupils thing is something I borrowed from Tula Lotte. I don't know how to pronounce her name right. She often just draws just circles for all of like the iris. I want to say, yeah, iris.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something I don't always use. But when I tried drawing pupils on him for a while and was like, it looks weird and wrong. And then I'll always try that. And I drew it and was like, that looks right. For some reason, that looks like Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Like just more blank, no pupil eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why it worked, but it did for me.
Johnny, what elements did you put into the suit? Because I know you've talked about your redesigns of the Justice League, and I can see the seam lines of the shirt.
Yeah,
but I'm
I
interested
put
to see what other
seams in
elements
there.
you chose to include intentionally and leave out.
So somewhat unintentionally, last minute, I did like a black background to the S that I've zoomed in on there. I did not go into it thinking I was going to do, but I kind of drew out the S and then was like, let me try it. And I liked the look of it. So I put that in there. And then, like I do with whenever I draw Batman, and a lot of superheroes really, because I quite like them to look a little bit sillier, I gave him like proper trunks, proper big, like I gave him a normal belt and
Yeah.
like
Yeah, I
a
like
buckled
that.
belt with like
Yeah.
belt holes I included as well. And and then like big, not big, but like loose trunks that he's just like shucked on over the top of a tighter suit that I always just think looks. I don't know what the word is because I don't want to disrespect Superman, but goofier, but in like a good way, in like a classic kind of way. Like you can't. I think it's a good way of acknowledging that like comic books are a little bit silly. I like just leaning into it a little bit in the costumes and drawing the seams on and making it look like it's something that someone has made. And then they've chucked trunks on top of it and done a belt over it. Oh, and I put laces on his boots. I don't know how people are going to feel about that. It's a pretty subtle detail there, right at the bottom, but the boots have laces. Sorry.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I wouldn't do that myself, but that doesn't mean that I think there's anything wrong with that at all. I
Yeah,
think that's
yeah.
awesome. You know,
That's another thing I do.
You and Paul Pope have the same sensibilities in that sense, and that guy's awesome.
Yeah. I think I get it from Paul Pope, but I give Batman laces as well.
That guy's awesome, but Johnny, you're not. Admittedly.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I don't have
Fucking
it.
came
I can't-
swinging ready with that one.
It was lined up. I had the bat in hand. I just hit the home run.
Yeah, you're right. I don't have the license to do it, do I?
Johnny, actually, something you touched upon I thought was really fitting was the fitting. This is gonna make sense in a minute as a pun, but when you talked about having like looser shorts over this like skin tight outfit, I think is funny because it like appropriately meets Clark Kent's modesty and like humbleness that he's not gonna wear like the most revealing outfit. I think that's funny.
Yeah. He's not going to be flying around with a moose knuckle. He's going to put shorts on top of it.
I almost just spit out my drink.
Oh my god.
Well, he's more worried about what Ma Kent's gonna think.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true. He
Yeah.
is on the news all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's that scene in Lois and Clark where Ma Kent makes the suit for him, and she says something like, "Well, you don't have to worry about your identity. No one's going to be looking at your face." And he's like, "Ma, oh my god." She's like, "They don't call him tights for nothing."
Wow.
That's so funny.
Oh my.
That's
It's just
great.
like,
That's
a
hysterical.
vaguely chiseled young Dean Cain. He's good looking,
Yeah,
so she's not wrong.
totally. That's funny.
Oh man, I love that. Johnny, I like how you also handled the motion in your figure work.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's something I tried out basically for the first time on this piece. We were talking about it, I think, unrecorded at some
Yeah,
point.
after you ditched us last time, Mike, we discussed it.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I went for like all of him as like clean line, except for obviously the cape there and then the arm. And I was mentioning some artists that I kind of basically stole that from. And I think I prefer it to drawing actual speed lines. Is you just like
Mhm.
draw the lines like real quick and blurry.
Yeah.
And once I tried that on the arm, I was like, okay, well the person he's hit, I'll try that on the whole figure there. And I think it worked out well. I quite like it.
Yeah.
Just
I love
doing an
stuff like
entire
that.
figure all fuzzy.
It's awesome.
I think it helped once I drew the rest of them in like a lot more defined, and then him just kind of a weird little fuzzy blur there.
Yeah, I honestly really like that as a means of stylistically showing motion in your current artistic style that you're approaching things with.
Yeah, thanks,
Right.
man.
I think that's a really great resolution to figuring out like how can I bring dynamic elements into this style.
Yeah,
And like
yeah.
I don't think you need it. Like I honestly think like you could have just drawn those lines straight and it would have been equally illustrating the point of him punching that guy. But
Yeah,
I think it adds something
straight
really
in the
dynamic
air.
to it.
yeah. The lines are clean in the pencils. It was something I thought of very last minute, but I was like, that would be fun to try out. Yeah, I feel like it worked. I think I'm going to use it a lot more.
That's awesome.
Thanks, man.
Did you with the parademons, did you have a specific reference for how you were doing those designs? Was it the movie? Was it Jack Kirby?
Oh man. Yeah, I don't know how well they worked out because at the close of the last episode, I had drawn this blurry figure, so that's nothing, and then the head of that one above him, and that is like fully referenced from the movie. But yeah, as like a not a big Superman fan, I don't, or like that kind of whole side of the DC universe, I don't know enough about it. So I was just like, all right, I've got to just Google this for reference, and then kind of only looked at about 3 pictures. One was the movie, one was like a comic panel from like looked like a while ago, like 80s or 90s, probably 90s, and then one was a little more modern. And I kind of just mishmashed. I made up like the torso completely, and mostly just used like my black feather thing. And then the head is just like very Batman v Superman. Like there's a still in that I like took a lot of cues from. That's the only one that's like most in focus. The rest of them are pretty far away, and I could get away with just like scribbling them out a bit. The wings, I wasn't really like. I started drawing them like real fluttery, and then was like butterfly wings almost, like constantly in motion. And then I looked at comics, and it seems to differ a lot. Every artist seems to completely differ on how they draw them. So I really didn't. I felt like it was a bit of a blank canvas to work with.
You're talking about the parademons, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they're totally open to interpretation.
Yeah,
Definitely.
just big
That's awesome.
monsters with like the only thing
Yeah.
that seemed like pretty much throughout all of it was like goggles, like circular goggles. It's
Yeah.
for some reason always in there, so I put them in there.
Yeah. They're kind of
Other
like
than
the
that, I pretty much just
stormtroopers
made
of
it
the
up.
DC universe.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a
that was
great
what I
point.
figured.
Always variation. And you can be real Kirby with it, or you can do your own thing, and there's no wrong way to do it. Like, it's all...
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Johnny, do you
'cause I
think
was
you're
just
gonna
have
color
them
that,
with
or?
me. Yeah, I might have to. Yeah. I always like set out being like, maybe this will be the one I just ink. But lately I've just been in the mood to just, every time I finish them, I'm like, I want to do some colors on it. Why not? And it's Superman, you know?
Yeah.
Superman needs some red and blue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Johnny, it's turning out absolutely fantastic, and I'm
Yeah,
crazy
well,
excited to
thanks,
see
man.
some cosmic colors on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cheers, guys.
Yeah.
But here we'll bump around to Nate, who's been steadfast in his work on this beautiful Superman piece. It's jaw dropping,
Yeah,
dude.
thank you. Big
Oh,
square.
man,
jaw.
yeah.
Yeah, talk about a jaw. Wow, that guy's head is a square, and I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it gets away from me a little bit. But I do, and we may have mentioned on the last one, somebody brought it up. I didn't really intentionally do it, but I did take some of the proportions and features probably from the Bruce Timm version from the cartoon. And it's not even really my favorite Superman, but sometimes I think like the best version is somewhere in between, like maybe what Bruce Timm did and like what John Byrne did. If you like mash those together, and you do kind of, my favorite Superman artist is probably John Bogdanove.
Oh.
I don't know if that's how you say his
Nice.
last name.
Yeah.
I love him, and he does like the
Yeah.
huge. Well, his proportions changed over the years, but like in the '90s during like the Doomsday stuff, he was like just this huge
Yeah.
hulking guy with his, like, the head was kind of small, but his jaw was just
Right.
like huge, and chin was like way down here, and
Yeah.
he drew his figures so dynamic. There was a lot of Kirby, I think, in his stuff. And I remember as a kid, like, man, it just really stood out as like, that's kind of like what comic book Superman. It was like John Byrne, Jerry Ordway, and John
Right.
Bogdanove
Yeah.
were sort of like my guys.
Yeah.
And so like I like that look. I simplify. I don't draw it quite as much muscle tone usually, but I think about generally those shapes when I draw Superman,
Yeah.
and I try to put kind of the face of like what Joe Shuster did, which is where like the squinty eyes comes from, is because that's how Joe Shuster would typically draw his face.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder who he was looking at. I wonder if he was looking at Gary Cooper.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, because Gary Cooper is a really interesting. I thought I knew a lot about him, but I was like, I guess he died pretty young. He died at like 60, and I didn't realize that. But I was looking at his face. I was like, man, talk about sculpted in granite. He had the pimples and the squinty eyes, and plus he's in High Noon, and yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What were your visual inspirations other than the, I believe you said Schuster's drawings of the original Superman face?
Mm-hmm.
What were some of your inspirations going into the suit design? Because admittedly, the way you shaded it reminds me of Alex Ross's Kingdom Come suit, where it's more of like a dark navy as opposed to this bright,
Oh, really?
almost cyan. Yeah, I'm getting more of that navy element to it. And of course, it's not colored; it's in black and white. So this is just my own visual input. But
It's funny because I don't usually love the darker blue on Superman. I don't like the super light sky blue or baby blue, but there's some comics and even some of the cartoons where I think it gets a little too like saturated. But I've been, when I draw Superman more, and it's probably just an effort to add more black to the figure to give just the drawing more balance. I do sort of like go in and heavily shade sometimes, depending on what the drawing calls for, the blues in the suit. A lot of times it'll be like, I'll sort of like pick one to add blacks to. It'll be the reds or it'll be the blues. And this time it was the blue. It's often the red, because I think back to like the black and white show the serials and then the George Reeves series, and the boots and the cape are always the dark element.
And I really love your metalworking here too.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I actually had a lot of fun kind of in here. Just like a lot of this is done just with like one of my bigger brushes and then with a parallel pen, just kind of adding shapes to imply machinery, inner workings of this thing, circuitry, whatever.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that's some of the more fun stuff sometimes is when it works. It's really easy to sort of like miss it. But I'm enjoying this one. I think it's working all right.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. It's so great.
Thank you.
Especially I think it shows your diversity in, I'll call it sci-fi technology, because you have rivets, you have buttons, you have lights, you have vents, you have squares, you have, dials. Like there's so many things within that drawing that aren't pulling away from your main Superman figure, but are detailed to no end, like incredibly well detailed. So I
yeah,
think
that's
this is
sort
like,
of that's the struggle is like how far do you go with the background before it's sort of like maybe pulling away from the figure or is just unnecessary.
Yeah.
That's always tricky.
well, I think you nailed it, man. This is an absolutely
you.
incredible Superman drawing.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That's awesome. This was one that I wanted to nail. And I'm pretty happy with it.
Well, luckily you have a lot of experience in drawing Superman as well.
Done it a few times, yeah.
If you've seen Nate's portfolio, guys, lots of Superman.
Yeah, it's like 70% Superman.
Wow.
And admittedly, there's nothing wrong with that because you do it so well.
Oh, thank you.
But here, guys, I'll move around to my piece to wrap everything up here. Similarly to the conversations about using ink, with my own style, which is a lot scratchier, I really wanted to avoid hatching up Superman himself too much, because in my own experience, I've found that it tends to pull away from the actual brightness of that character. It becomes a little too dour. And so I spent more time hatching and rendering the tractor, and I'm pretty proud of it. And as a follow-up challenge to myself from our Flash episode, in regards to speed lines, I took it upon myself to try it in the tire wheels here, because of the whole aspect is Superman is stopping this tractor from hitting the cows at the bottom. I really wanted the wheels to look like they were moving, and not like Superman was just lifting a random tractor and some cows were like checking him out while he did it. So
Right.
yeah, it was important to me to try to capture motion in those wheels. And not that it's the perfectly executed way to do it, but I think that this showcases that I'm developing that further, that movement element within the work, other than just like a punch going across, So I'm pretty proud of how the tractor came out as an element within this drawing.
Good.
I really like the little detail where he's lifting it off the ground, that little burst. I love that.
Oh, thanks, man.
I think that's great.
Yeah, that's something with Ultramax that like I've never admittedly done it in work before, just in my own drawings, but I've been using these graphic elements, almost like the pow punches, like in the old Adam West Batman, to kind of visualize action or movement. And I think it works. I think it's nice to have this big splash of white, even though, of course, the whole background here is white. I think within the action of the scene, using this as a graphic element of like direction to notice like, oh, hey, there's a big thing here that's not hatched or marked up like everything else Mike has drawn. What is that indicating on this page? And so like for this with the movement, I'm really enjoying using these. So I'm hoping to develop this further a little bit and maybe use it for other purposes if I can, like maybe making it more subtle with like putting a cup on the table or like pressing a button. But yeah, honestly, one of my favorite parts of this whole drawing is actually just this lower eighth of the page where I've done this corn and this dirt road. The cows, they might not be showing up too clearly on the screen at the moment, but I'm quite proud of the mom and the calf here. So, and the silo even. This was probably my favorite part to draw because I just got to noodle. Lots of leaves, lots of pieces of corn coming out the top here. And that's always just fun. Because
Yeah,
you know
that's
what?
always one of my favorites.
Yeah, when you get to noodle things in that aren't
Yeah.
specific, and you can be like, okay, no one's gonna be paying attention to that detailing. It's just fun to go in and do it because you're trying new things. You're like, oh, let me do this random shape. It's very free flowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely lets you like open up your subconscious while you're working, because if you're too rigid,
Yeah.
which I tend to be in terms of like thinking about like exactly what I'm rendering at that moment, like this wheel or like the bottom of the tractor, it can get a little lifeless. But when you're going into these elements where you're like just kind of like do 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 do, there's a lot of life in that. So I really enjoyed doing that in this drawing.
Yeah, it's definitely a sign of confidence.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that, because I probably didn't feel confident doing, but yeah, no, I think.
Thank.
Yeah, in truth, I think it is a sign of confidence, because it's almost carefree, you know. I'm not worrying about whether or not it's going to be like the perfectly rendered stalk of corn. It's just I'm doodling this and it's corn. And people are going to look at it and
anytime
go,
you
"That's
can just
corn."
like automatically draw something, that's always the best.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I
even,
also,
oh, go ahead, Johnny.
I was just going to say, I think we said this on the chat and not recorded, but you tackling the underside of a tractor is a
Yeah.
bold move that I think worked really well. You managed to do it in a way that I was halfway through. I think while I was penciling that, I probably would have started thinking of ways to make it something other than a tractor.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would have been like, I'll rework the whole scene if I have to. I'm not doing the underside of a tractor. Who the fuck knows what that looks like?
Yeah,
So
you're a
you
crazy
really nailed
person, dude.
that.
Oh man,
Yeah.
I wish I could find my thumbnail sketch. I don't know where I threw it off to, but if you saw the thumbnail going back to the first part of this episode, it's literally just like a black T in the thumbnail, like no detailing. It's just like all black. And so actually, I have it right here. I actually redid the inks on this one. I had to reprint out my pencils on it, because when I went into the underside, I wasn't prepared for how I was going to do the shading, and I totally butchered it compared to like how I think it should have been. And so in redoing it, I knew exactly where to leave the white space, as opposed to like in my thumbnail where it was just all black. I knew that I'd penciled in all of this detail, so I had to figure out a way to let it breathe and not just cover it up with black ink. But it turned out pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah, it looks great. Yeah.
Even though you are, like he said, a crazy person for choosing to draw.
Yeah.
But everybody keep in mind, if you're watching this and you actually have experience with tractors, this is not what a tractor looks like on the bottom. I just drew like vaguely engine-esque and like like steering like apparatuses underneath in the hopes that someone's going to look at it and go, yeah, that looks like a tractor. But anybody who's actually...
You don't know, man. You might have just completely lucked out. Some tractor expert might be watching and might be like, he's fucking nailed it. That's
He's done
exactly
it.
what it is.
He's like, I know the year and model of what you drew.
But with that, guys, that just about wraps up the episode. And speaking of all of these links, please check out the description below where you can find Instagram links for all of our portfolios of work. You can check out all of our superhero / non-superhero artwork there, as well as the official Ink Drink Think Instagram page link, which if you follow, you can find the finished drawings that we're not just completing today, but finished drawings from every episode of Ink Drink Think thus far. Please leave a comment or a like, because I'm now learning that the algorithm is important to getting views. So if you can, just leave a like. Tell us what you thought. If you would, tell us in the comments below who your favorite live action Superman is, because we'd really appreciate to hear it. And believe it or not, we'll reply to every single one. Okay, I can't promise that. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to episode 9 of Ink Drink Think. I have been Michael Pickard, joined by my wonderfully talented co-hosts and friends, Johnny Wise, Nate Wells, and Todd Blackwood. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this Superman episode, and be sure to tune in next week, because we have a pointy-eared fellow to be drawing.
Oh, man.